Hello all, welcome to another video. My name is Chuck. So today we're going to talk about the topic of interest and fees and the difference between them. Also, we're going to touch base on waivers versus disputes or cases that you can make against them. One of the things I always like to know is I always like to know what my options are, so I'm going to give them to you. This is not legal or financial advice. This is just me trying to explain with someone who's worked in customer service for years on some options that you have that you could go through and do, or how to make better use of your waivers. So first, let's start with legitimate versus illegitimate charges. One of the things you want to keep in mind is this particular interest or fee a legitimate charge or an illegitimate one? Interest, most of the time, will be the APR or the amount that you had that went over and multiplied by the APR. Really boring on the math. Most companies will go through and just give the charge on your account, but you've got an idea for it. Late fees, however, are generally a set amount. So, for example, first month maybe $27. Next month increases to $37 or $39, somewhere in that range. It depends upon the company, depends upon how much you get charged. So keep in mind, a lot of times the first one within like a 6-month period will be a lesser amount. The second one will be a higher amount. You always want to keep an eye on it, because we'll discuss on why you want to keep an eye on those charges going forward. The legitimate ones are whenever you clearly missed a payment and you got charged a fee on there. So, or an interest charge on there, also tacked on a late fee. Some credit cards do not have late fees, and we do really appreciate those in particular. So, the ones that you want to keep an eye on is the illegitimate ones. So, for example, if there was a banking error or an agent error, or possibly not receiving a statement, some companies will go through and see about doing disputes on your behalf if it's not a legitimate charge. So most companies do have a system in place to go through and dispute or set up a case for these. You want to keep an eye on the difference between the two. The big reason why you want to is because if it's a legitimate charge, you want to go through and look at getting those waived. If it's an illegitimate charges, there are ways to go through and get them disputed. It just depends upon what you want to do. We'll discuss more about this as the conversation goes on. Most companies are willing to go through and educate you on which are legitimate and which are not if you ask them the questions. If you're not sure on it, you can go through and request to speak to a supervisor on this. We will discuss this more later, but it is an option if you feel like the representative you are talking to does not know what they are talking about. Interest normally comes on the bill that is paid. One of the things that I do like to bring up is a lot of times interest will be charged for 2 consecutive months. So let's say that the first month you miss your payment, you will get charged for the full amount of it. Let's say on $1,000 you had a $30 interest charge on it. The following month, let's say you paid it halfway through the month, so you would only be charged half the month's interest. And so instead of $30, it would be $15 on the following bill. You want to keep a close eye on this because sometimes there will be a little bit more you have to pay. Each credit card company is different, so you do want to talk to them. However, let's say in that previous example, you ended up paying 10 days instead of halfway through your billing statement. You would only have been charged $10 instead of the $15. That was the halfway mark. So keep this in mind. A lot of companies do have some practices that you will want to keep a close eye on. What is a waiver? A waiver is whenever the charge is legitimate, you should pay it, but the credit card company will go through and waive it for you. There are several different types of waivers. Let's call it a punch card system, where every 6 to 8 months you get one free waiver and you get to use it however you wish to. Second type is there may be an account, an invisible account that that is invisible to you. You basically will get fees or waivers or even credits on your account from this account. This is not something you get to know about, but may be available to the representative you're speaking to. The third type is an algorithm. This is a system that goes through and decides whether you are eligible for it or not eligible for it. And as you go through and use request waivers, you will have them used on your account and may not be eligible for future ones. The representative does not get to see them. Most of the time there is not a way to go through and override this unless you're talking about like a goodwill credit or something along those lines. Keep in mind, out of the three types I mentioned, there may be other systems that different credit card companies use. These are just the ones I've experienced while working in customer service. Now, a dispute is whenever you're arguing that a particular late fee or interest charge is not valid. Now, most of the time they will go through and educate you on the process on whether it is legitimate or not. One of the things you will want to go through and do is you will want to provide them proof why it's legitimate. Say there was a banking error. Say, for example, a previous representative promised you there would not be. One of the things you will want to do is you will want to go through and have proof, or at least a date, so that way the company can go through and check the records. Most companies, you will hear a monitored and recorded line on it whenever you are calling in. That is a sign that they go through and keep records of this. Keep in mind, the representative you are on the phone with is not going to have access to your phone calls. I wouldn't want someone to have access to all the calls that I've ever called in on. Notes on the account, whatever. But the actual phone calls, don't want just anyone to be able to have access to them. So there may also be an appeals process with this to go through and get this removed. Keep in mind, you want to be as detailed as you can. Think about this is you're basically having to go through and play a telephone game. The telephone game is you talking to the rep who puts notes into the account, who those notes are then used to go through and dispute your case on them, read by someone completely different. So you want to be as detailed as possible, and you want to make sure the representative you're speaking to is taking the notes necessary to go through and win your case for you. So with those things in mind, one of the things that you will want to look into is that sometimes there's a process to go through and overturn a case that's not been won in your favor. Sometimes you do have to start over, so make sure you make the most of your time by being as detailed as you can. You can also sometimes speak to a supervisor if you feel like the person is not necessarily representing you the way that they should. And then let's go through and answer one more question. When should you ask for a waiver? One of the things I like to talk about is that you want to go through and do your order of priorities. Let's say you've got a 4-cent charge on your account. If you're dealing with an algorithm or a punch card system, you do not want to use your one waiver every 6 to 8 months, or necessarily you trust the algorithm to go through and waive a future charge. So you will want to go through and save those. Consider it sort of like an order of operations. You always want to go through and waive the highest one first. Under a certain amount, I wouldn't necessarily worry about a waiver. If you want to dispute, make sure or set up a case for it, that 4-cent charge, that's when I would go through and do it. You also do want to pay off your card as it's being investigated if you're fighting it with a case. So just keep those things in mind as you're going through and doing so. One of the things I'm going to touch base on is escalations. Escalations is in the case that you feel like you're spinning wheels or you do not have faith in the representative that you're currently speaking to, that they are properly putting in the details. You can go through and request a supervisor. Keep in mind, sometimes they do have additional benefits like being able to award higher amounts, but they also have additional power and can go through and make some decisions on your account. Keep in mind, there may also be someone else other than a supervisor that makes the actual decisions, but let's say like a floor supervisor or something of that nature, something where there's someone over them who makes the actual decisions, or a back office team that makes the decisions that are involved on your account. So just keep these in mind. The one thing you want to do is you always want to be professional with them. Talk to them. They're people too. Do not come in angry, because angry will only get you so far. You want to go through and understand that if regular reps cannot hang up on you, not saying that they will, but certain people have the right to go through and hang up whenever customers are being abusive. So you want to keep an eye on who can go through and hang up, and you do not want to get short with them, because that may end the phone call, and then you may have to go through and spend time with the next representative explaining your situation. There is also the invisible reputation of the notations left by the previous representative, so you want to be on good terms with the supervisors in particular. Just because you want to be able to plead your case, you are a valuable customer to them, and you want to talk to them. Hey, I've been with you guys for 20 years. I want to continue business with you. Can we work something out? Sounds a whole lot better than I demand this happen. So at least come in with an understanding that you may need to go through and compromise. You may not get 100% of what you're after. Have an amount that you're willing to compromise with and work with them. So they may have to go through and deal with that backroom team, but you've at least set up the expectation that you can go through and do, and that you're reasonable. People like to deal with the people that are reasonable. They do not like to deal with people that are going to yell at them, swear at them. So always remain professional. Keep in mind, you're also building a relationship with your company, and just like any relationship, you can end a relationship with them. However, if you go through and be professional the whole time, most of the time they will give the same courtesy to you. This is just going through and going over basics. If there's anything else you guys want to know, talk to me about it. I'll see what I can do. Also, one of the things I always like to do is I like to have knowledge. Knowledge is power. If you guys need anything else, let me know. If nothing else, like, subscribe, and we'll talk to you later. I hope you have an amazing day and stay safe.